This bam, we're recording. Okay, we're rolling. All right, so thank you everyone who's made it to the Zoom meeting here. Thank you for joining the Cuba tour. I'm going to do a quick PowerPoint presentation and just point out some things as we go. As far as basic stuff, everyone's got their flights booked. I still need emergency contact information from David, Heather, and Kyla. Kyla's not here. Emergency contact, name and number, and any pertinent medical conditions or food allergies or any type of allergies we should just be aware of, just in case. If you can email those to us, please. All right. Now, as far as flying into Cuba, before when I've gone 3 times. It's been almost 3 years. Next month will mark 3 years. I was there last in February of 2020, right before the pandemic started. Well, it was started by then, but before everything shut down. I actually believe that I had a few cases of COVID with us in that tour. Doctor back here could not diagnose what this woman had. He said it's something we've never seen, very much flu-like symptoms, so it might have been an early case of COVID. Anyway, that's the last time I was there. And I've gone 3 times, 2018, 19, and 20. And as you probably know, in 2015, President Obama opened it up to tourism. Americans could go as tourists. You didn't need a valid reason or justification for going. You could just go. The following administration shut that down and restricted travel and also remittances and things like that. And I could see year after year from 18, 19, and 20, there was less and less business, less and less traffic, tourist traffic. So it really impacted their economy. And American tourism was really allowing their private economy to thrive. So people who had homes that were large enough to convert into casa particulares, they're called. It's like a bed and breakfast in America. They were opening them up and renting out their homes. Restaurants were opening. So the private economy was really thriving then, and then it dwindled year after year. And then they really suffered during the pandemic, as most countries did, but a country that relies heavily on tourism, they were really impacted. Then we had the big storms last year, which did a lot of damage too, especially in the western end. The Pinar del Rio region, where we'll be going to Viñales, was impacted greatly. So I will say Cuba is really hurting right now. And during that storm, there were people even in Havana that couldn't get water or food for a number of days, including my guide and other friends there. So they were hit pretty hard. So I'm a little, I'm not going to say worried, but a little anxious to see how things are going there. But just plan on random blackouts throughout the day. That's going to happen. Might be without some conveniences. Hopefully the power will come back on quickly, especially at night, so we can have air conditioning. All the castles I've ever stayed at always had air conditioning. It gets very warm there, even in the winter. February is a warm month, just like about any month there. But so they really need the revenue. So I'm glad that we can go down there and bring them some business. Our guide, Haleen, he's been my guide ever since I've been in Cuba, since for my first trip there. He works for another company that I went with that time. And since then, he's always been my guide. I like to tell him he's primero mi amigo, siempre mi guía. He's my friend first, and he's my guide always. He's a good man, young man from Havana, and he's fluent in English. Mike and I both speak some Spanish. I'm sure some of you do as well. It's not necessary. It's kind of nice to be able to speak with them a little bit in their language. However, Cuban Spanish is muy rápido, very fast and choppy, very difficult to understand. I can understand Spanish from other parts of the world better than Cuban Spanish. But in pretty much anyone who works in the hotel restaurant industry, they're going to be able to speak English proficiently. So it's not necessary. Most Cubans actually do not speak English. However, I have to point out a couple of things. They have an excellent education system. They have one of the highest, if not the highest, literacy rates in the Western Hemisphere. They're very well educated. English is a second language that's taught at university, not in primary or secondary school. So it's college students, it's college where they would learn English in college. So they've done very well with education. They are very highly educated, very and they have a lot of ingenuity. You know, when you see all the classic cars, they're a novelty and they're cool to see and they're fun to photograph. And I'm not a motorhead by any stretch, but they're pretty neat. The reason they have all those is because they had to keep them going. They couldn't get new cars from the US because of the embargo. So they had to fashion parts out of whatever they had to keep those cars going. So it's pretty impressive. There's also a YouTube video about the surfing scene in Cuba, which was banned for a while. But it starts out with a man who made a surfboard from, it was either an ironing board or a refrigerator door. And it worked pretty well. So a lot of ingenuity there. Okay. When you book your ticket, you probably, was anyone asked the valid reason for visiting Cuba? Did anyone have to declare that yet?
Not
No.
yet, no.
No.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So the last time I went, I declared that when I purchased my ticket and also when I booked anything via Airbnb, I had to declare the reason for going. Just so everybody's clear, support for the Cuban people. That's the reason you select, okay? We're framing this as more of a cultural exchange. We do directly support the people financially. We're staying in private homes. Our guide is a private guide. He doesn't work for the government. The restaurants and businesses we frequent, they will be privately owned. As Americans, it's our government's policy that we're not supposed to stay at government-owned hotels, facilities. They're all owned by the communist government, and therefore we would be supporting the communist government. So as Americans, we're not even allowed to stay at those technically. So we're staying with private citizens. And again, that's how we are directly supporting the Cuban people. So my guess is you're going to be asked when you get your tourist visa, your Cuban tourist visa, which will probably be right at the gate on your last flight that you depart from wherever it is, probably in Florida, the flight that goes to Havana. It's probably going to be a booth right there at the gate where you purchase your Cuban tourist visa. Should be around $100. The last two times I went, I flew via Atlanta on Delta, and it was direct from Atlanta to Havana, and I got my tourist visa at the check-in counter in Atlanta. But Delta has not resumed their Cuba flights yet. So once Mike and I get there, and we're arriving a couple days early, we'll confirm that is the case. We are flying in on American Airlines. If you're flying on a different airline, you may want to contact them and just ask. But basically they know nobody can get on the plane unless they have the tourist visa. So it should be there and available right before you board. Okay. So, and with that tourist visa, obviously you have to keep that with you when you arrive, and also your boarding pass. Go ahead, Courtney. Oh, dog made a noise or something. Something made a noise. Anyway, it's cool. All good. You keep your boarding pass with you as well as your tourist visa when you're in Cuba. And when you arrive at customs, they're going to stamp one of those documents. I don't recall which one. And basically the stamp, that is your health insurance when you're in Cuba, should you need to go to the doctor for any reason. So keep that with you. So you do technically have health insurance through the Cuban government when you're there. So again, they will stamp that on either your visa or your boarding pass when you arrive. Everybody's arriving within an hour of each other. So I think we can just make one trip to the airport on Sunday, the 12th. That makes it really easy. And once we're there at the airport, in the email, there were instructions on where to meet us, a detailed sign, the yellow info tour sign, meet us right there. One or both of us will be there with our guide, Haleen. And from there, we'll take you into Havana. We'll get settled into the casas, and then we'll walk around the rest of the afternoon and evening and have dinner in Havana. Then the next day is a full day in Havana. We do a lot of walking on this tour. This is actually our most active tour physically. We do a lot of walking around the city. We do some hikes to waterfalls, and if you'd like, you can swim below the waterfalls. It's a lot of fun. And we also do walking farm tours in Viñales. In Trinidad, and south of Havana, we'll do a horseback tour of the farms there. And at the farms, you can purchase coffee beans, honey, cigars, rum, things like that. So, any questions so far?
When you say purchase, is there like a limit to, I guess, the currency type that we take, dollars versus $5 versus national?
No, a couple of things. You will exchange your currency once you get down there. Maybe do about $100 worth US when you get to the airport. We'll probably get a better rate through Haleen or at a bank. So we'll do that the next day, but I would have at least $100 to start with, get that at the airport. If you want to research and see if the euro is stronger or something with versus the Cuban peso, you can get euros before you leave the States. Exchange those if you like. I've always just brought US cash. Very important though, whatever extra Cuban pesos you have, you should exchange those before you leave, because once you leave the country, they're yours. They're souvenirs at that point. You can't exchange them in the US. So exchange what you have left before you leave. And as I pointed out, Cuba's an all cash economy. Certain places, more like the hotels and government-owned places, will accept credit cards. However, your credit card as an American may be blocked in Cuba. Last time I was there, I couldn't log on to my Bank of America account. I could not get onto the App Store to update my iPhone. So take care of these things before you leave. If you have any auto payments or payments that aren't auto and need to be made, updates on your phones, devices, do that before you leave, because you may not be able to connect when you're down there. Wi-Fi is kind of hit and miss. It's usually in a public space and you buy a little card right in the park. People walk around and sell those for twice what you pay for them, but it's like $1. And it's worth that extra 50 cents to not stand in line for a half hour to buy one at the office, trust me. So some of the hosts or restaurants might have Wi-Fi, but it's not as well connected as a lot of countries. Then again, it's been 3 years since I was there, so that could have changed. Did I answer your question? I kind of went off on a tangent there. I say, $1,000 is way more than you should need. It's better to have extra than not enough. 500 is more realistic. So breakfast is covered every day. Any side tours, entrance to national parks, museums, things like that, that's all covered. That's included in your fees. The only thing you're going to be paying for really is lunch and dinner. And we're going to buy one dinner in there as well. Bottled water, we drink bottled water there only. Okay. So you'll pay for bottled water, whatever other beverages, souvenirs.
Colin?
Yeah.
One note on the water.
Yes.
So my buddy Nick was just in Cuba for a month, and Nick is very frugal. So Nick brought a SteriPen and a reusable bottle, and he never bought a single bottle of water, and he never got sick because he would, purify his water.
Yeah,
That's
a good idea too.
Is that the same as using iodine drops or something?
No, SteriPen is the UV
Right.
rays. You swirl it around in your bottle for a minute and it zaps it. But you could use iodine if you as well, or a purifier like you would use for hiking. You can purify your water. We just used a purifier for 3 weeks in Nepal as well. It saves on reusable plastic bottles, which we all know are going to be the demise of this planet, and it's just an option.
Yeah, that's a great idea. In fact, I'll probably bring mine as well. I've brought it before, but I ended up using mostly bottled water. But yeah, that's great. You can save plastic and save money.
Yeah.
So
I'm just one more. I'm definitely bringing mine because I'm taking it to Ecuador and Colombia as well, and then I'm going straight to Cuba. So I'll have mine with me as well. You just need extra batteries, and then we're good to go.
perfect.
Is it like something at REI that you would
Yes.
get?
Yes.
Yeah, that's where I got mine. Yes. Yeah.
I can take a photograph of mine and then just put it on an email for everyone so you can get an idea what it looks like. It looks like just a pen, and it's got like a plastic tube with like a bulb, an old school bulb on the end, and it glows kind of a purple blue. It's fairly efficient and it works well.
Yeah, we were using those out at McNeil River this summer and they worked great.
Yep.
Cool. All right, yeah, great idea. Yeah, Mike, you could just take a picture with your phone and put it in the WhatsApp group.
Yeah.
And
There you go.
you can get them that work off of batteries, or you can get one that's rechargeable with USB.
Yeah, the rechargeable batteries or double A's or the combination of both. If you can't charge it, you can use the others, whatever you like.
The
Yeah.
outlets are the regular outlets? Are they?
Yep. You
Do we
don't
need
need
a
a converter.
converter?
Do
Okay.
not need a converter. Yep, they're the same as ours. Let me touch on the COVID policy quickly. As we stated in the email, they lifted their restrictions as far as you don't have to present a COVID vaccination card or a negative PCR test to enter. If you are vaccinated, I would just bring the card anyway, just to have it. But they are randomly testing people as upon arrival. Now, I just been in touch with Haleen, their guide, and he said he just did a tour. I think he's done a couple tours recently and didn't have any issues. Nobody was randomly tested. The odds are very slim that you would, number one, be selected, number two, be positive. Okay, but if you are, then you have to quarantine in Cuba. And if you don't have symptoms, you go to a hotel. If you do have symptoms, you go to a medical facility. Now, medical insurance should cover a medical facility. However, hotel maybe not. And that's why, as we stated earlier, if you've not, we strongly recommend getting travel insurance to cover anything like that. And again, it'd be wise to test yourself if you have an at-home test before you leave, just to be safe. And if you do test positive, you're covered 100% if you get Allianz travel insurance. So strongly recommend that. Mike and I are both going to be getting travel insurance for this one. We don't always, but definitely going to for this tour, just because of that. So that's their policy. I do anticipate that they're going to require masks, at least in the airport, customs, things like that. Other places, I kind of doubt it. Again, the last time I was there was before the pandemic was, in full effect. So, yeah, but when Cuba has a policy, they mean it. So when they say put your mask on, don't argue, just do it. They're strict. They have strict policies there and guidelines. So, but outside of the airport, I don't think they're going to be in much use, at least not required. So that's Cuba's COVID policy. Our COVID policy is on our website if you want to look that over. We did on our last two tours have cases of COVID, both in Iceland and Namibia. It's a reality of life now in travel, especially long distance travel. You can guarantee that between your departure in Havana, you're going to come in contact with COVID somewhere in there, in an airport, an airplane, somewhere. It's going to happen. So it's a part of life. We'll do our best if we do have any cases to isolate that person, ask them to mask up in the van or in tight quarters. But keep in mind, we can't just leave somebody behind. So what we're basically saying is it's on you to use all the tools at your disposal to protect yourself and others around you. So we encourage vaccination. I still mask up in busy airports in places where I think, people are coughing or hacking or whatever. If I just feel like I'm around any type of illness, I'm more likely to put on a mask now than previously. So definitely have one with you and just take whatever precautions you can, because it's no fun having COVID on a tour. Luckily, the cases we've had have all been fairly mild. They bounce back within a couple of days. In addition to COVID, this is flu season. And one of the first tours I led down there, somebody showed up with 2 types of influenza. 6 more of us got sick, including myself. And I hadn't gotten a flu shot that year. It was brutal. And it's no fun to be sick when you're on vacation, right? So we encourage flu shots. It's up to you. We don't require them. But it really reduces your chance of getting a serious infection. And anything else as far as travel to Cuba, the CDC's recommendations are available on their website. I think we sent a link for that. Tetanus shot should be up to date. Hepatitis is present, but I don't think it's real common. That can be foodborne. That's a series of vaccinations. So that takes several months to get the full vaccination on that. Oh, and dengue fever, that's more present now than it used to be. Because of the big rainstorms, mosquitoes are more, they were able to breed, they're more populated. Dengue is more common. Mike's friend Nick, who was just down in Cuba, got dengue shortly before he left. My friend, this little girl in Havana, she just had it as well. So her mom had told me. So it's definitely more common now. Bring long sleeve and long pants for areas where there are mosquitoes, and bring some insect repellent. There is no vaccination for dengue, by the way. So there is for children, but not over 16. So that's not an option to get a vaccination for dengue. So let me go ahead and start this slideshow here now. Okay. Everybody see that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. We're looking at the map of Cuba. It is by far the largest island in the Caribbean, by far. And you can see where we'll be going here. We'll start in Havana, of course. 2 nights in Havana. We'll make our way down to Cienfuegos. And on the way, we're going to stop and go for a swim in the Bay of Pigs, Playa Larga. Now, it looks like we'll actually have the option for those of you who want to go swimming or snorkeling. You can do that. We swim over a shipwreck from the battle. It's pretty cool. Also, in Playa Larga is a B&B that has a number of bird feeders. And what's very common there is the bee hummingbird, the world's smallest hummingbird. So I think we'll have the option. You can either go snorkeling or you can go see the world's smallest hummingbird. They're both in the same town. We'll have 2 vans, so we'll just split up into 2 groups. So you'll have that option. So we will spend 2 nights in Cienfuegos and then to make our way down to Trinidad. So Havana, La Habana, as it's in Spanish, everyone thinks of the classic cars, and we will be doing a classic car tour. It's always been convertibles when I've done it. On our first full day, later in the afternoon, when the light's a little nicer, we'll do a tour of the city via classic car. So you're going to see a lot of these, and it's definitely a big draw for the tourists, and they are certainly a novelty. They're fun to photograph. But again, a lot of these are around because that's just simply the car they have, and they can't get any new car. Now you'll see some newer European and Japanese cars, but all the American cars are, pre-1960. Dog dressed up in Havana. This was my first time there. Plaza Vieja, we'll visit this part of town. That was very lively. And this was 5 years ago. So I don't know how busy it's going to be now because of the pandemic and restrictions on travel from the US. This current administration has eased up some restrictions. I hope they go further and just open it up more. So it's, it just allows more visitors and commerce to their country. But it is a lively city. This was my first day. I arrived earlier than most of the group, and I walked around for hours. And this lovely woman came up and gave me a kiss on the cheek. And then she flashed some fake badge that said she worked for the government, and I owed her $20 for the kiss. I refused. I think I gave her $5 and said that's going to cover it. But that red mark was on my cheek all day, and I didn't realize it until later on. Somebody pointed it out. A couple women were laughing, and they came up and wiped it off. These are some of the streets around Havana. The people, the street photography, people photography is wonderful. Be sure and ask somebody, photo por favor, before you take their photo. Be respectful, but they're often open to being photographed. They're very friendly and welcoming. I've always felt very welcome and very safe in Cuba. It's late in the afternoon. People sit out on their doorsteps. It's a big social scene. Cigars. These were black market cigars here. I didn't buy any. If you're going to buy cigars, probably best to buy them in the store, or one of my hosts where I stay outside of the tours has a connection. Everybody knows somebody who works at the Cohiba factory. That's their most popular national brand. And they roll extras on the side for extra money. So it can probably get you through some from that source. If you buy a big box of Cohibas in a store, it's probably going to be $500 or $600. They're expensive, even in Cuba. Better option is to buy them on the farms in both Trinidad and Vinales. Vinales has the best tobacco in the world, allegedly. That's their claim. And actually, those are my favorites from the farms in Vinales. And the other thing about that is you're restricted as to how many Cohibas you can bring back. I've recently heard that you cannot bring any back. I don't know if that's true.
That's what I read.
That's okay. Then they've restricted that, and also bottles of rum.
Well,
I'm probably gonna take my chances and bring back some rum. The cigars from the farms, those are considered arts and crafts, actually, and those were not limited. So if you're gonna bring back cigars, it's probably easier and safer to buy them on the farms. They're much less expensive. They're better, in my opinion, and easier to bring back. So there you have it. This is a woman in Havana. She's kind of a famous woman there. You'll see pictures of her around. She smokes cigars, and they pay her $1 for her photo. It's worthwhile. This is in the old train station. This was being worked on the last couple times I was there, so I don't know if it's probably gotten a facelift. It's kind of cool the way it was in that picture of Che Guevara. You're going to see his face everywhere. You're going to see Che's face more than you see pictures of Fidel. Okay. He's a very, very popular figure there. You're going to see a lot of revolutionary propaganda. They're still very much promoting Viva la Revolucion, Cuba Libre means a free Cuba. You're going to see this a lot. And it's just, again, it's a lot of propaganda. They're still really promoting that. They're very proud of their victory in the revolution. They're also very proud of their victory in the Bay of Pigs battle. So they have a day, actually, I think the kids get the week off for school. And it's, what is it called? The Day of Triumph. It celebrates the day that they, won the Bay of Pigs invasion. This is my little friend, Stephanie. This was my very first day in Havana, and I was walking around by myself taking pictures. Again, I felt very safe the whole time. It's a very safe city. And she ran up to me and wanted to have her photo taken, and she was with her mother and grandmother. I spoke very little Spanish then. Her mother spoke very little English, but we were able to communicate. We remain in touch. I see them every year when I go to visit. I always bring school supplies for her, new shoes, and whatever else, a new backpack, whatever else she might need. Certainly, I plan to see them again this year. They may join us for our first dinner in Havana, so you may get to meet her and her mother as well. So she's now 5 years older than in this picture. Lovely girl, beautiful eyes. She's definitely got an attitude, but I call her mi amiga pequeña, my little friend, although she's not going to be so little anymore. And there she is in front of that picture of Che at the train station. Another popular face you'll see in Havana. He's probably still around smoking his giant cigars. His one leg is a very famous figure. You'll see his paintings of him as well. Maybe we'll see him on the street as well, and you can take his photo. He'll probably ask for $1. You can see he's holding a US dollar there. Which, by the way, they did, since I was there last, open some US dollar stores. So they only took US dollars. Well, however, that didn't go very well. I don't think they're open anymore. So just plan on converting to Cuban pesos. A lot of stray cats and dogs. Plan on seeing that. Thing is, they also feed these animals. Restaurants will put food out for the strays a lot. So, I probably shouldn't, but I do pick up and pet the cats. Can't help myself. Some kids playing in Havana. Baseball is very popular there, as is soccer. And if you want to bring a gift for the Cuban people, bring a deflated soccer ball. It'll go in your bag easier if it's deflated. and we'll have a pump and a pin down there and we'll fill it up. And when we see kids playing, we'll toss them a new soccer ball. It's a great gift. So baseball and soccer are very popular. Boxing is actually the most popular sport, and the best chances of securing, should I say, a ticket out of Cuba as a professional athlete is via boxing. This is Chinatown. Havana does have a Chinatown. However, it's the only Chinatown in the world that probably has 0 Asian people living in it. Ironic. This is our classic car tour. This is our guide, Haleen, right here in the passenger seat. As a young man, probably in his late 20s now. That's the U.S. Embassy. It was shuttered the last few times I was there. There is now a staff in the embassy. So the embassy, the U.S. Embassy in Havana is now staffed. This is the El Capitolio, the Capitol in Havana, and it should look very familiar. Now you can see it's under construction here. Hopefully they finished that. But if it looks very familiar, that's because it was designed exactly after the U.S. Capitol. Exactly. It is an exact replica of the U.S. Capitol. So we'll definitely go by the Capitol. And one of my favorite restaurants for lunch is right across the street. We'll stop there as well. This is Revolutionary Square. We'll definitely visit that on our classic car tour. This was my first time. This is the group I was with, my first visit. It's a statue of Jose Marti, little Cuban history. He's basically the godfather, you could say, of Cuba, the nation of the Republic of Cuba. He was a revolutionary in the Spanish-American War. In that time period, he was actually, I think he was killed in the war. You'll see a lot of statues of Jose Marti. He is like their godfather. He's bigger than than Fidel. These are buildings, office buildings, government buildings around the plaza. Che Guevara's face there, that famous image, the most reproduced photograph in all of history. Hasta la victoria siempre, the victory always. That was his saying. This is Carlos Cienfuegos, and his famous quote was "Vas bien, Fidel." When Fidel Castro would be speaking, he would turn to Carlos and ask, "Am I doing it right?" And this was his way of saying, "Yes, vas bien, you're doing it right. You're doing it well." There was a little rift between Mr. Cienfuegos, Carlos, and Raul Castro, Fidel's brother. Raul is a bit envious that Fidel was asking Carlos if he was doing it right rather than his own brother, Raul. So there was a little bit of friction there. And Carlos Cienfuegos disappeared in a plane crash after the revolution. Of course, there's a lot of speculation that Raul arranged that. Who knows? It's possible. But anyway, he's a prominent figure in the revolution as well. This is still the Revolutionary Plaza. There was a vote. They do have votes in Cuba. It's communist regime, but they do have votes. And this was on reforming parts of the Constitution. And the embargo against Cuba. This is on a school bus by the plaza. Nueva Constitución, new constitution, of all and for all. De todos y para todos. This is a statue of John Lennon, and we're going to visit this on our classic car tour. It's in a park in Havana. And the significance of this is that for many years, when Cuba was aligned with the Soviet Union, rock music was banned. Okay, and later on, the Soviet Union dissolved, and then they later allowed people to listen to rock music, including the Beatles. And very nearby, there's a nightclub called the Yellow Submarine Club. And during the ban on rock music, it was an underground club where people would listen to the Beatles music. Anyway, it's no longer banned. You can listen to rock music. The club is out in the open now, and there's a statue. Fidel Castro was there for the unveiling of the John Lennon statue. And there's a woman whose sole job it is to take off and then put on the sunglasses on John Lennon every time someone wants to take a picture with him, because people were stealing his sunglasses. So this is her job. She puts the glasses on John and she takes them off when people leave. And this is a sidewalk square that says, "You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one." And this is the Malecón in Havana. Explain shortly. Recognize the song. All right. So that is the Malecón, and that's a big social gathering every evening. People walk to the Malecón. Malecón translates to seawall. So it's, I want to say, about 3 miles long in the city along the sea. And we'll certainly spend some time at the Malecón. A lot of street musicians. There are a lot of very talented artists in Cuba, visual artists, musicians, things like that. So a lot of street musicians. The nightclubs all have great music. You're gonna definitely hear the Santana song "Oye Como Va." You're gonna hear it everywhere. It's popular down there. Another classic convertible here. This is looking back on Havana at the end of one of our classic car tours. And this is a cannon up on the hillside across the harbor from the Malecón. And if this is still going, we might be able to go up there. We probably will go see this. They shoot this cannon off every night. It's interesting. So we'll probably see that as long as this is still happening. Again, I'm not sure how things are right now since I haven't been there in a few years, but prior to, during my last visit, every night they lit off this cannon. Seafood, they have wonderful seafood there. This is the local restaurant near Playa Larga, where we go swimming in the Bay of Pigs. This is Playa Larga. There is the shipwreck from the Bay of Pigs battle. So we'll swim right over that, those of you who want to go on the snorkel tour. This is the Bay of Pigs Museum. This is a history of the US and Cuba relations, which I did include in that last email. Can't just be somewhat familiar with that. And it would be a good idea to download some podcasts for your flights and learn a little bit about the history. We will visit the museum, the Bay of Pigs Museum, as long as we have time. It's very interesting. She doesn't look too thrilled with her job there, the woman at the desk, but it's a very interesting museum. Keep in mind that you're of course, going to hear their side of the story, okay? We're in the US, we hear the American side of the story of that battle. You're going to hear their side of the story and how they were victorious against the great empire of the United States. I encourage just to go there with an open mind and just take it for what it is. It's historical, it's interesting, and of course you're going to hear their perspective. So just please don't, take offense to it in any way. Just remember we're in Cuba, so we're going to hear their version of history. Before we go any further, we did briefly mention it, but on the topic of politics, it hasn't really been a problem, but we do have a firm rule that we don't get into heated political discussions on the tour. We avoid that. Let's leave the US news cycle behind and just take a break from all that, please. It's been pretty chaotic. Let's get away from it and just take a break from all of that. So again, soccer balls are a great gift. We just tossed this one out to these little girls that were playing, and they were thrilled to get a new soccer ball because they're hard to come by there. And usually when you see them playing, the ball is pretty beat up and ratty. So they will be thrilled to get a new soccer ball. If everyone brings one ball, that'll be 12 soccer balls. Don't feel compelled, but if you do want to bring something to give away, again, that's a great thing to bring. Cienfuegos, this will be our second city where we stay in. Again, a statue of Jose Marti. It's a statue of Benny Moré. He is a famous singer from Cienfuegos. I believe he did perform at the US Grammys. He was around in probably the 40s and 50s, maybe the 60s, long time ago. Che Guevara, again, this is all in Cienfuegos. And we'll spend 2 nights in Cienfuegos. It's a really nice city. Very more cosmopolitan city, say, than Havana. We'll take a day trip up to El Nicho Park, and this is where we can hike up to a cave. It's interesting. This is the first tour I led in Cuba, and there are bats in the cave and really cool limestone formations. We hire a local guide there. Haleen goes with us as well, and the guide only charges like a couple pesos. It's not much. It's basically a tip. If you enjoyed the tour, you tip them a couple pesos. And these are one of the waterfalls. There are several up there, and we go swimming below the falls. This is the first time there, and there was a lot of water that year. In times I've been since, you could not jump off that little waterfall. There wasn't enough water. There was another little canal where we did some cliff jumping, though, very small cliff jumping 10 or 12 feet, not much, but it was fun. So we'll see how much water there is there. We'll have dinner at an open air restaurant after we visit the waterfalls. And I got up and played the house musician's guitar. And you see that capo on his guitar. I brought that with, and I left it with him. He did not have a capo for his guitar. So I left that with him. I saw him the following year, and he still had the capo, still using it. So that made me happy. Soccer ball we gave to some kids and actually joined in their game for a little while. And a third city we visit is Trinidad, not to be confused with the island of Trinidad. This is Trinidad de Cuba. And it's a very nice city, really unique, unique architecture, a lot of history, a lot of European history, a lot of history with the slave trade. And it's a very confusing city. It's easy to get lost in, and it was designed for that reason, to confuse intruders or invaders. So be careful if you wander around on your own. It looks very much, a lot of streets look the same, and it was designed for that way, or in that way, to confuse people. This is looking down at Trinidad and the ocean here, and this is from where we go up to Topos Grande. This is my first group in 2019. The guy, if the Spider-Man's there, you can hold his tarantula and buy some bananas from him if you like. Of course, it costs a couple dollars. Right where we begin our hike to Topos, and Topos de Calantes, that's what it is. Topos de Calantes, that is the home of Cuba's tallest waterfall. It's a bit of a hike in there, a couple miles. The last bit is kind of steep, a descent and down to the waterfall, maybe 300-400 feet anyway. It's kind of slippery, rocky, so just be aware of that. But right at the start, there's a coffee plantation. You can sample their coffee. They roast the beans right there, and you can buy coffee beans. You will also be able to buy coffee beans on the farm tour in Trinidad and in Viñales. Cuban coffee is very strong. There's a joke, a meme I saw that in Miami, the reason why meth never took off is because they have Cuban coffee. So it's very strong coffee. It's a strong flavor. They roast it over a fire. So just be aware of that. You can actually like taste the fire roasted process. I like it. This is Vegas Grande. This is the tallest waterfall. It's about 500 feet tall. And if you like, you can go for a swim there. It's wonderfully refreshing after the hike. And then after we leave Trinidad, we'll make our way back to Havana, and I have requested that we go to the home of Ernest Hemingway, called La Finca, means the farm. And it's a beautiful house, beautiful mansion. And the word is, everything is as he left it when he had to leave. And I think it was 61 or 62. It was either a US official or a Cuban official said, you have to go. Because of the government policies, you can no longer stay here. And he was very reluctant to leave. But apparently everything is as he left it. This is his writing room. In other rooms, there are partially finished bottles of rum from Hemingway. So again, the legend is everything is as he left it when he departed Cuba. There's a swimming pool. Apparently Rita Hayworth went skinny dipping in a swimming pool, and he told his staff to never change the water again. There's this boat which he somehow convinced the US government to send him funding and weapons during World War II, with the premise that he was going to control the waters around Cuba for German U-boats, submarines. And he had this plot that when the submarine came up and lifted their hatch, they were going to just toss a grenade into the hatch, and that was going to solve it. You know, take care of the U-boat, the submarine. I think it was more than anything an excuse and funding for him to go fishing and drinking with his buddies on his boat. They did allegedly see one German U-boat that whole time. Of course, they didn't throw a grenade down the hatch. Nothing happened. But anyway, he convinced the US government to allow him to do that. Floridita, this was Hemingway's favorite daiquiri bar. He's got a permanent spot at the bar there. And that's in Havana. There are La Floriditas in other places. There's one in Trinidad, but hopefully we can get to this one in Havana. There's a photo of him talking with Fidel Castro back there. One of the fancy hotels, if you will, in Havana. Ones that we're not supposed to stay at as Americans. Downtown Havana. This is their National Theater in the background. One of those buildings, I think it's the one on the left, I think is the National Theater. Right there, yeah. Yes, that's the National Theater. To the right, Hotel Inglaterra, which means a Hotel England, basically. And then after a night in Havana, so we have 2 nights in Havana, 2 in Cienfuegos, 2 in Trinidad, back to Vinales for 1 night. That'll be our last day with Helene. The next day, we'll be departing for Vinales, and Helene does not go with us to Vinales. We use local guides there, and they will pick us up. They arrange the transport to pick us up in Havana and bring us back. And then I'm going to request that we go straight to the airport because everybody's departing Tuesday afternoon around the same time, within a couple hours of each other anyway. So 2 nights in Vinales. This is one of my favorite places. It's very scenic. These limestone mountains are just stunning. That's a tobacco barn in the background there, where they hang and dry the tobacco before rolling the cigars. We'll see a lot of those, although a lot of them were destroyed in the storms last year. So it's a very rural community, a lot of different types of farms, a lot of fresh food, fresh produce, pretty much everywhere in Cuba. Plan on fresh produce and fresh fruit and seafood and vegetables. I always eat very well there, and it's very healthy food. Of course, you can choose to eat the more fried foods if you like, but they have a lot of really, really fresh food, fresh seafood, wonderful seafood. I really like the shrimp there. Lobster is rock lobster. It's not probably as good as Maine lobster, but anyway. More of Vinales. This is my buddy Joe. He went for a walk and showed up in the sidecar of this man's motorcycle, and this guy had obviously had a few shots of rum or something. He was in a jovial mood. I wouldn't recommend that, getting in anyone's sidecar who's been drinking, but anyway. Vinales, I'm going to contact a local guide there named Fidel, who takes us on a sunrise tour. We walk up into the mountains to a home. Right there's a home, and we watch and photograph the sunrise over Vinales Valley. And they will serve us juice, coffee as well. You pay for it. It's not much, but that is available at the house that we visit as we watch the sunrise. This man was open to having his photo taken. His wife didn't want her photo taken. Again, I always ask for take someone's photo, but he'd pose for me. I really like that image. Interesting note, these people are called the Aquaticos, Los Aquaticos, and basically their religion is that water purifies and heals everything, cures everything. We will learn more about them from our guide on the walk, but they practice a religion based around water, and they are called the Aquaticos. Interesting point there. It's a painted painted cliffside here depicts the evolution of the world from the very first, serpents, sea life, all the way to humankind over here on the right. And this is a cigar farm in Vinales. We watched the cigar rolling process. He just finished that start to finish. You can sample the local rum. That rum there is made with guava berry rather than sugarcane. And there's a sunset in Vinales. So that'll be the last 2 days there. So I'm going to try and arrange a walking sunrise tour, our first morning in Vinales. That afternoon, we'll do a walking farm tour. Okay. So exit that. Okay. All right. Any questions so far? Anything in the chat box I need to follow up on? Okay, well, we're pretty much finished here. Personal items, as we mentioned in the packing list, be sure and pack all that with you, vitamins, medicines, toiletries, all these things, because Cuba does not have a whole lot of convenience stores. Okay, so bring everything you need there. Luggage, try your best to pack light. It's a warm country, shouldn't need much for heavy clothing. So yeah, pack as light as possible. We do say no hard-sided suitcases. We're gonna have limited space in the vans. So if you can bring a medium, say, suitcase or duffel bag on rollers, and like a carry-on backpack and personal item, whether that's a purse or a laptop or what have you, just please do your best to pack light and keep it small, because we will have 2 vans, and then we're going to have 13 of us plus 2 drivers, so a total of 15 people in 2 vans with luggage. So just keep that in mind. We don't want to be too cramped in our vehicles and our vans. So yeah, no giant suitcases, and please no large hard-sided suitcases. They're really tough to pack.
Colin, in terms of camera equipment, what would you recommend lens wise and that kind of thing? Tripods and all that?
Yeah, so this time I'm going to bring just one camera body, as well as a little DJI camera, video camera, and a GoPro. But lenses, I will bring my wide angle 17 to 24 millimeter. I'll bring a normal range lens like 24 to 120, and then I'll bring a small telephoto, my 80 to 200. We're not going to see a whole lot of wildlife, some birds definitely. So that's where I might use the 80 to 200 millimeter. We're sure we'll see their national bird, El Tocorodo. They're common, they're tough to photograph, but we'll see them. But you don't need a massive telephoto lens. It's really not a wildlife trip. And so yeah, those 3 lenses, a wide angle, then kind of the normal 24 to 120, and then an 80 to 200 is what I'll bring. You don't really need a tripod unless you want to do some long exposures at night, star trails, or maybe on the beach, some long exposures. We'll definitely go to a couple beaches for sunset. You can hang out, you can swim, you can photograph, you can do what you like. You might want to do some night photography in Vinales. I may or may not bring a tripod, I'm not certain. Also street photography. I showed you some of those night shots in Nevada with the street car lights. I definitely had a tripod for those. So. Okay. And as far as healthcare, remember they're going to stamp your boarding pass or your visa. That will serve as your health insurance should you need to visit a doctor. Cuba does have good healthcare. Their facilities aren't as modern as ours, but they do have good healthcare. They train more medical professionals and doctors than any other nation. They export doctors to other nations. So they really have great education and healthcare, and they've done well with the means that they have. They developed their own vaccines for COVID using outdated lab equipment. So very, very impressive what they've managed to do, being cut off from a lot of the world for all these years. Last thing I want to mention is drinking. By all means, enjoy yourselves. Have a few beers if you choose. I know Mike and I certainly will. I really like Cuban rum. It's some of the best rum you can find anywhere, in my opinion. You'd be hard pressed to find a better tasting mojito or daiquiri outside of Cuba. So enjoy yourselves. We do want to point out that the purpose of the trip, though, is not to drink in another country. And we haven't had too many issues with this in previous tours, but we just want to put it out there. By all means, enjoy yourselves, but please don't go crazy. So we just don't want to have any issues with anybody over drinking, being belligerent, anything like that. Again, it hasn't been a big issue. We just want to put it out there. Hey, we're all adults here. Enjoy yourselves, but it's not a party trip per se. We will have fun, but we're not going there to party in a communist country. Okay, we're there to
It's,
experience the culture and the scenery.
Colin,
Yeah,
Colin, as you said before, this is quite an active tour.
that too.
So, we're getting up every morning and we're going and we're going and we're going. So it just doesn't, it doesn't lead to a lot of late night drinking and partying. Yeah, of course, I love rum too, and I'm excited about tasting some awesome Cuban rum. But yeah, it's just everybody has different tolerances as well. So we're not going to be your parents. We're not your mom and your dad yelling at you, but just think about, tomorrow I've got to get up and be responsive and be able to go out and enjoy the day. So.
Good point. Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Yeah. So yeah, we do get up every morning. We're on the go a lot. It is an active tour. We're very active. We're walking a lot, hiking a lot. We're on the go. We want to experience as much as we can. It's really about the scenery, the culture. Just soak it all up because it's an amazing place. I've always felt very welcome. I've always felt very safe. Despite the friction between our governments, I've always felt welcome there, and they've always been very kind and open to Americans visiting. Though many of them are very fascinated with the United States. Of course, a lot of them would love to visit or move here. Every Cuban has a cousin in Miami. It's given. And in recent years, I think in the last year, more than 200,000 Cubans have actually showed up at our southern border. So definitely they're intrigued with the US. A lot of them that want to get here. And that's just another testament to how they're hurting economically right now. So hopefully we can, we will be bringing them some business and some much needed revenue. So let's look at it that way. Any questions? Any more questions? I think we've covered everything. Okay.
Believe
Yeah,
I've got
have
everything I had.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, I believe everything got answered that I had questions for. So
Wonderful.
Have you ever had any problems coming back?
Never have. No. Again, select support for the Cuban people, and we will frame it as more of a cultural exchange. We're there financially supporting them. Keep a daily journal. Just bring a little journal book. Every place we visit, people we meet, make notes, and never had to show that. It's never been an issue. Haleen is still leading tours of Americans. He would tell me if there had been any issues. I've gone 3 times, never had an issue coming back. I've declared that I've had rum and coffee beans and cigars in my bag. They didn't bother to look. I've also declared nothing. They didn't look. So I've never had an issue. And I've brought, at least 20 some people with me over the years. Nobody's ever had an issue in any of my groups. So what we're doing is legal. We are supporting the Cuban people financially. And with the new US administration opening things up a little bit more, hopefully it'll be even, less worrisome, if you will, than during the previous administration. But again, I never had any issues, and I was there 18, 19, and 20. So there you go. Well, if nobody has any other questions, I'm going to press the stop recording button. For those who missed the meeting, we'll post it on our YouTube channel, or if you want to go back and review anything, it'll be there for you. Any other questions, just message us on WhatsApp or email us, call or text, what have you. And yeah, internet down there, I briefly mentioned it's going to be hit and miss. Your phone carrier most likely doesn't provide a plan for Cuba. So if you need to make any phone calls or anything, do that when you have Wi-Fi, use WhatsApp or Skype. But hopefully nothing pertinent, because don't count on being connected at any time, at any given time. Okay, it's gonna be hit and miss, so.
Just one thing about the phones, cell phones, and if you want, because my buddy Nick just did this, he bought a SIM card down there that you can just put into your phone, and then you can use your phone down there. So you just be getting a Cuban SIM card and swapping it out for your SIM card that you have in your cell phone now.
Cool. Yeah, that is an option. I've never done that. If anyone wanted to, we could ask Kayleen how to go about doing that, but I'm sure we could acquire a SIM card there. If you needed to be connected at all times. But I never have, but it is an option, certainly. Cool.
I got one question.
Yes.
Is anyone else really interested in photographing birds? David?
Yep.
If Colin was saying about the lenses, if you're a bird photographer, you know that a 200 millimeter isn't going to cut it. So that's up to you if you want to bring a bigger telephoto lens. There you go. I've got a Sony. I'm bringing a 100 to 400, and I've got a 1.4x teleconverter, so I'm up at 560. That's even a little shy for small birds, but hopefully we can get close enough to where we can get some shots.
Nikon's been letting me play with this with the 400 4.5, and then I put a 2x teleconverter on it. And
Nice.
it's actually been doing really good at 800 millimeter.
Wow.
so-
Yeah, that's amazing, because most of the time 2Xs just don't do nearly as well as 1.4s.
Yeah, this new Z system's been doing amazing with the teleconverters. So
Sweet. Very
What
nice.
lens is that, David? What lens?
I'm sorry,
What lens is that?
400 4.5.
Cool. Yeah, if you want to carry it around, go ahead. You're welcome to bring any lens you like.
This complete outfit with the Z9 and this weighs less than our 200 to 400 that you and I play around with all the time.
That's great. There's a reason why I'm not bringing my 200 to 400, because it's a heavy beast. Yeah. So, and not everyone is here for the photography. Some people just want the experience, and that's fine. I'm sure you'll bring a camera or at least an iPhone or something. Lots to take photos of there. So yeah. So cool. Well,
Wait, I have one last question.
yes.
Uh, what's the shark situation when you're swimming?
They are there. There certainly are sharks. Never encountered one or heard of one being close when we've gone swimming. But they are present. And we go out a ways. I mean, at Playa Larga, that's at least a quarter mile, maybe not, maybe a couple hundred yards anyway offshore. That boat, the sunken ship, is probably in 50 to 60 feet of water. So they certainly could be there. There's another place we snorkel as well, called Wahemico, and it's closer to Trinidad. You can snorkel or scuba dive. If anyone is a certified scuba diver, you're welcome to scuba dive there. It costs a little more to rent the scuba gear, but that's an option for you. But yeah, sharks have never been an issue, but they're certainly there. I know that. So we'll ask Kayleen when we get there as well. And if there have been more recent shark sightings or anything like that, that he's aware of.
Okay.
And there are crocodiles. There are crocodiles. I've never seen one in the saltwater, but they are there.
Almost
Okay,
worse
you
than
may-
sharks.
What's that?
That's worse than sharks.
So they are present. They live in some of the rivers and streams. There's a place there that breeds them and releases them into a river, and they do go into the ocean. But I've never seen one there. I've never heard of one being anywhere where we swim, but it's possible. And this is why it's a good thing they have quality healthcare.
Ha!
And why you should have trip insurance. Kidding. I wouldn't worry too much about it, but certainly if it's an issue, we'll ask Kayleen. So
I'm excited. I've sailed by Cuba 3 times. I've flown over it a couple dozen times probably, and that's one of the few islands in the Caribbean I have not been to. So looking very forward to it.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, you know, most Americans have not been there because of the embargo and travel restrictions. So it's, you know, it's kind of a novelty in itself. So it's a very interesting place, fascinating. Again, it's one of my favorite places to visit, and I hope they're, you know, hanging in there. I know they're going through some hardship right now. One of their worst economic periods. Their worst period is probably in the 90s when the Soviet Union collapsed, called the special period. They really suffered. But they're hurting right now. So I hope we can, you know, do what we can for them. So I feel I have a lot of good friends there that I've made, and a lot of close connections in Cuba. It's a special place for me. So I hope you find it fascinating and inspiring and intriguing and welcoming as well. So,
Okay.
all right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.